Thanks to our new friends at NASCAR. Awesome. Shout out to all the muscle car collectors, the hot rodders, the racers, the gearheads. Here we go. I'm here to talk about maybe GNU Radio, but that's going to be covered elsewhere. I am a Maitland Bottoms. I'm a Debian developer. I contribute stuff to GNU Radio because I have itches to scratch like anybody else. And I volunteer as a developer in the Debian community, which is a community around free software, or it's an operating system, or it's a Linux distribution. The most recent release of this Debian Linux distribution is codenamed Bullseye. It's Debian 11, and it was released just over a month ago. So now you know everything I'm going to talk about, Debian and GNU Radio. I'm going to talk about installing Bullseye and getting started on GNU Radio, and then what you can do. So I could keep talking about Debian and GNU Radio. You're soaking in the community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here virtually. And like you've heard already this morning, please help us. We continue to need help to do the task we set out to do, which is to make a GNU Radio toolkit and provide signal processing blocks for you to use. You can get the source. You can get Linux distributions, Debian, Ubuntu, Arch, and you already heard Furconda talking about PyBombs as the installer. There's also an Ubuntu PPA. So there's lots of ways to get GNU Radio. So Debian is also a big community. I could keep talking about GNU Radio. We are all here to build this toolkit, like Debian is here to build an operating system. Debian and GNU Radio share some common beliefs that free and open source software is the way to make the future better. And we're all volunteers, so you can join the Debian project as easily as you can join the GNU Radio project. So for the operating system, it's basically what runs your computer. There's a lot of people, choose, there's an operating system almost per person practically. But the reasons people choose Debian is it's non-commercial, it's competitive, it's easy to install, and it's openly developed and has a good active security team. Now, for GNU Radio, maybe the security team isn't what you're here for. In GNU Radio, you're here for the documentation team. They're the ones that add value to the whole project. And the Debian operating system is the basis for derived distributions. So Ubuntu is one of them. You'll see many GNU Radio developers who are using Ubuntu. Mark Shuttleworth is a keynote speaker here. And he once said that every Debian developer is an Ubuntu developer. But there's also, aside from the community, a source and binary distribution. You can't run a Git repo. You have to install binaries that your computer can run. You can do that without compiling on the target machine. There's lots of toolings around Debian packages. Everyone wants to get binaries to run on their machine, but it's really all about the source. So getting the source to end users, the source for review and audit, the source for reproducible builds efforts, which Debian is key player in that community, a source for derivation improvements. So GNU Radio and Debian, as you'll see, they're a natural fit. We value free software. If you contribute to GNU Radio, expect yourself to find yourself contributing to Debian. So on to the release. Debian Bullseye. Debian is big, really big, kind of hard to comprehend how many packages are in it. You might think Red Hat is something, but that's just peanuts compared to Debian. That's what Douglas Adams might say. 4,821 packages updated in the last release cycle. So time marches on. Nobody wants Python 2 or Qt4 or old stuff anymore, which of course was the basis for GNU Radio up to 3.7. It hasn't been out 2 months, but we've got New software, the new GNU compiler collection, CMake 3.18, Boost, Qt, Python 3.9, all fresh off the press, just released a month ago, and they don't hear people in the back. Maybe the people online are grumbling about it's old and obsolete already. The main thing about Debian as a release is it's targeted to be the universal operating system. It runs on everything from laptops to supercomputers. It's got a RISC-V port already. It should be the universal way to go. So in the Bullseye Debian release, there is GNU Radio 3.8.2. This is an eye chart. You can Google for stuff later. Everything on the left side is the components that you can get from running GNU Radio config info enabled components on your system. And I'm proud to say this time there are no disabled components in GNU Radio in Debian. So the universal operating system now has a universal GNU Radio. I do want to point out on the right side, GNU Radio was built with certain dependencies. Volk 2.4, which is, the good stuff. UHD 3.15, which is rock solid. The Debian Thrift now works with GNU Radio. This is a good thing. Codec 2 library is a fun adventure for many hams. Python 3.9, and I have to say Swig, because this is a GNU Radio 3.8. GNU Radio 3.9 will be on PyBind 11, but that just wasn't ready by the time the release freeze happened last winter. So I've got a little note on the top about it's GNU Radio 3.8.2, but it's been updated with 53 upstream packages that I cherry-picked out of the Git repo to sort of do my own release management and get as many of the good pieces into the Debian GNU Radio as possible. And they fixed real bugs and did useful things, so they're important to get in there. But there's an ecosystem. It's not just about the GNU Radio and the enabled components. As you saw with the previous talk about how much hardware is supported in Conda, the left-hand side is some of the same stuff. UHD Edis has got that into GNU Radio since the earliest days, but GR Osmo SDR allows lots of other hardware to come in, and there's also the SOAPy mechanism, which will allow a lot of hardware support. And so there's AirSpies, there's BladeRFs, HackRFs. We have a wonderful community of people who are building hardware to get signals from the antenna into your computer. And as the universal operating system and the universal GNU Radio, I strive to support that in the Debian GNU Radio. The center is all out-of-tree GNU Radio packages or projects. Those are also Debian package names, every one of those. Air modes is for tracking airplanes, and FCD Pro Plus is making the old Funcube dongles work. GR Phosphor is I've already seen it in demo in the gallery. It is the real-time spectrum analyzer display for you. GRIIO, because Debian is releasing with GNU Radio 3.8 to use the analog devices stuff. It has a separate GRIIO add-on to support the Pluto and other hardware from them. And there's also GR satellites. There's also applications that are built off of all this. So there's GCarX, GNSS, InSpectrum, several others. And there's documentation. So the Doxygen documentation gets built into a Debian package. It's very big. You can install it on your laptop. And you can enjoy it on a desert island because you don't have to be online to read the basic documentation. So again, this is part of an ecosystem. over on the right side in some of the ham radio packages I'm listing, and for the audience, this is an eye chart, but for later, this is all Googleable. These are all packages in Debian and ham radio. GNU radio is on the right side of it, but there's support for things like the Joe Taylor WSJT-X modes for ham radio. There's AIS and ADSB stuff that are in other applications. Also all co-installable in Debian. So, oops, I'm going the wrong way. So you've got a fresh install. You've gone and you've seen that the OS installer is not that hard, and probably I could have started that and gotten a good way through while getting the slides up. The first thing you'll want to do with a non-GNU Radio targeted one is use the apt and install GNU Radio and libvolk2 bin and GQRX SDR. Now, the libvolk2-bin, it's a sort of a Debian convention. There's libvolk, which is the library for the Volk, the signal processing library that GNU Radio depends on. And the -bin is these utilities that you can run to support the library. So Volk profile is the first thing you want to run on your machine after you've installed and everything's idle. And that will optimize all this library for your hardware. Then the next thing you do is you run on the left there is GQRX. That's showing you a spectrum display, a waterfall plot. It's instant gratification. You can see the RF world around you. You can demodulate and listen. On the right is my example of the GNU Radio Companion. That's a long-term relationship. You'll spend a lot of time there. Now, I didn't just do this so it comes up with a relatively blank screen. I'm giving you an action shot showing you the GR phosphor display. But it's where you sit and spend your time asking yourself, well, what if the signal looks like that? So the first things in the companion is you can actually make a block diagram into something that runs. You are programming. You are a developer, and you can start coding in a few hours or a few days. It'll take a lifetime to master. You start out with the flow graphs, you start tweaking them. So the first thing GRC will do is emit Python that implements your flow graph. Then you start hacking onto Python and learning Python. And then you say, well, my blocks are in C++. So then you start working in C++, and then you realize you have more out-of-tree projects. So as you start down this path, you will learn a lot about Git. You'll learn a lot about Python and CMake. You'll learn more about signal processing and DSP. You'll learn all kinds of software things, but one of the things you'll learn about is you'll learn about other developers. And the first, when you're developing, you edit files. This is new in the Bullseye release, is that there's more introspection in the Emacs environment for completion of libraries. Here I'm completing an FFT from FFTW. Or no, it's actually getting the GNU FFT class here. And you get help on hover, so again, using a GNU Radio example, it's actually looking at your work functions. This is great. Python people have been doing this for a long time. Now, with the Bullseye release of Debian, you can do this in Emacs. And I presume the Vim users and whatnot also have got some IDE features. This works off the LSP library to do language-specific support. So as you're using other people's code, I want to highlight that this is available in Debian Bullseye. You can probably do this in other OSs as well. You want to start doing OOT development yourself too. And you're going to say, well, what do I do? Well, Build Essential is a Debian package you need to install. CMake, Ninja Build. I noticed the Conda one used the Ninja Build of the GNU Radio build. So you add some other libraries. get the Vulkan FFT library helpers, and then GNU Radio has grmod tool, and I just wish you good luck. It's an adventure. So as you start down, you're a developer. You got to give credit where credit is due. So when you do your flow graph, put your name in there as author. Copyright your work, license your work, state these things clearly so other people can see them. Credit others whose work you derived, comply with the licenses of other people's work. But we all would not be here were it not for sharing and making free and open source libraries. So I hope you follow suit as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We allow ourselves to share our code, and this is part of the development process. So I ask everyone to release clearly. There's one policy is early and often. That's a good release policy. There's another very good one, which is when it's ready. Debian, other distros love tarballs. Git release tags are also a good way to communicate between the person writing code and the user what it is. And extra points, you're at the start of quality control and security ecosystem. So if you can hash and sign things, everybody wins. In documentation, Debian likes man pages, but there's lots of other documentation. Work done in documentation leads to successful outcomes. And I think the fact that there's been so much effort in GNU Radio documentation is going to bode well for future success. Also, new in the Debian Bullseye release, there is now a feature where the debugger can actually get all the symbols. And this is for every Debian package, not just GNU Radio. So you can say, oh, well, I don't want to bug this other support library that I'm using in GNU Radio. And so I want to call out that there's this debug infod, which is a way that if you put this URL in your session, start up the GDB, which is the GNU debugger, your binary will load and all of the symbols will be there, so you know what the variables names are. You can test their value. You can see things in more human readable things. If you want to go look at source code, you still need to find source code, but this is a new feature in Bullseye. Hopefully it will come to and I think the Fedora people are doing this too. Hopefully it will come to every Linux distribution to help you debug. I already hear that it's old and in the way. Packages are old, they're not what we want, but Debian has them, and Debian has policies, and so I'm a believer in packages. I think the Conda people believe in packaging. There really are ways to do things that get the code to the people. Having every developer talk to every user isn't the way to do it. There's a role for distributions of any kind. If the packages aren't what you want, you can make your own. I'm going to point out that I'm not going to tell you how to do all that here, but there's lots of examples. And if you're really upset about, GNU Radio isn't being maintained because there's sort of a snapshot. GNU Radio in Debian stable release, it's kind of like the race car that needs to be the same car at the finish of the race. So there's a support period. And you don't swap in a new car halfway through the race in NASCAR. So you don't really swap in the new version of GNU Radio in the stable release. But for development, the future is now. There's going to be a next Debian release, and you can install Debian testing. And there'll be new bits coming soon. GNU Radio 3.9, 3.10, some new packages, requests. There'll be new versions of many of the libraries in our ecosystem. So you can keep up with the future or enjoy the old stuff. So I have to say, in my youth, I had a mentor. He helped me realize that stock products could be a starting point for personalized and modified vehicles custom to my own liking. Old things can be maintained and improved rather than cast away. So on these cars, I put wider wheels and got paint that was made to make me happy. And of course, these cars were also platforms for my amateur radio adventures. So I hope that you enjoy building your own custom thing, using GNU Radio, using Debian, and that you bring somebody younger than you along for the ride. Any questions from, I'm here from Debian, and I'm here to help, so anyone have any questions about using GNU Radio as part of a distro?
All right, thank you so much, Mate. It was very informative. And so anyone that's ever, apt to get install GNU Radio has Mate to thank for that and the incredible amount of work that goes into maintaining all that tooling. So we definitely thank you, and thank you for the informative talk here.